Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Cancer Support Community Central Ohio's Natural Living Workshop with community herbalist Lily Cunning, who graciously volunteers her time with us and takes time away from Haven Herbs to spend her morning and sharing her knowledge and expertise with us. Lily, welcome. It's always wonderful to see you.
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to see so many people are interested in gardening for medicine. That's very cool. It's definitely the time of year where I'm dreaming of my garden. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And just so everybody knows, after these sessions are over, I emailed Darlene some resources. So those resources will include the deck that you're watching now, which has embedded links, but it also has a worksheet to help you plot your garden. It's got like a little grid on it and some tips, and then also a companion planting chart to help you best decide what goes where. So that will be coming your way after this session is over. But let me go ahead and hopefully everybody sees that. And I have a little tiny 13-inch laptop, so where I put people sometimes changes throughout the recording because I can't see what I'm doing. But anyway, hello. So today we are going to go through, let's see here. Let me get to, There we are. Today we're going to talk about what you might want to grow based on medicinal needs and what grows well here in central Ohio. And then what do you already have planned, right? A lot of people who attend this workshop are already gardening for food. I know for myself, I never want to go a summer without my purple Cherokee tomatoes because I eat a tomato sandwich every day for lunch once I start getting them. So what do you have planned? And then we can kind of integrate through interplanting and companion planting strategies how to get the most out of your garden. So it says companion planting here, which I will go over what that means, but also interplanting is something that I think a lot of American gardeners don't do currently, but could definitely benefit from. So we will talk about that. And then we will start your plan. Like I said, I will be sending you a little grid with on the back, it talks about like different ways to go ahead and start thinking about what to plan where, and then where you might source medicine. And I have a couple different places that I recommend because not everybody knows where to get medicinal seeds, right? Or seedlings. So yeah, let's get started. Um, and I just want to say kudos to all of you who are thinking about gardening this year. It couldn't come at a more critical time. Um, the cost of everything is skyrocketing. So growing your own food, like spending $3 to $6 on a packet of seeds that will give you food all season long and possibly even more to can. I like canning. I don't know if other people are into that, but I still have things that I canned from last summer that I am eating through this winter and spring. So until I can get back to getting some fresh stuff. The first section, I'm going to very quickly, and again, you are going to get this deck, so don't feel like you have to furiously take notes about everything. I'm going to go through 21 different herbs that you might want to consider growing and why. Starting with thyme. Now, a lot of people, if you're growing culinary herbs already, are growing thyme, but many people don't know that it is a fabulous medicine as well as a surface cleaner for your home. It is profoundly antimicrobial. It kills more pathogens than bleach does, and that is why they are starting to make hand sanitizer out of thyme with no alcohol needed. And so not only is it an antimicrobial that you can take internally or use in salves to apply topically to kill both viruses and bacteria, but you can steep it in vinegar and use it as a surface cleaner throughout your whole home rather than using toxic chemicals or aerosol sprays or anything like that. With just vinegar and thyme, which is much less expensive than any of those cleaners, you can kill way more pathogens than they do. Yarrow is another antimicrobial, but it's also a styptic and a anti-hemorrhagic, which means these are fancy action words that we use in herbalism, but it means that it stops blood flow, both externally as a styptic, right? You put it on a wound and it stops the bleeding, which I find really valuable for people who are on blood thinners. I make like a powder out of the leaves and it just completely stops the bleeding. It's also an anti-hemorrhagic. So a lot of midwives use yarrow tincture internally to stop hemorrhaging. It's also one of those herbs that if you've got like just a lot of internal heat, you've had a fever going on excessively for too long, it moves heat from the inside of the body outward and it helps promote sweating and things like that. So it's great. And it also helps wounds heal. So it's great, like I said, as a topical, both to stop blood flow and to help accelerate wound healing. Stinging nettle is one of my favorites. It does sting, so you have to harvest it with gloves. But those stingers have things that work magic on the immune system. It is both an anti-inflammatory and an antihistamine. So it's fabulous in the spring. If you have spring allergies, you can make it into a tea, you can cook with it, you can tincture it. There's just so many ways to use stinging nettle. I love it. It's one of my favorites. But like I said, harvest with care. um, Lemon balm is also one of those fantastic antiviral plants, and it also helps with anxiety and depression both. It is considered a mild nervine sedative, meaning it's calming, but it doesn't sedate you. So it's also suitable for people with depression. It also helps relieve gas and bloating and nausea. So it is just really nice and it's so pleasant tasting, right? It makes a lovely tea. Mint of any type. I put peppermint here because that's pretty commonly known. But gosh, my favorite is chocolate mint. I also love apple mint and pineapple mint. All of those have a really lovely secondary taste of those flavors. You can get all kinds of mint. I would encourage you to either plant it in a container or somewhere that you have a lot of space because it is a very successful plant that will multiply quickly. So plant it where you have the space for it to spread or in a container. It is a carminative, which again is that digestive herb for gas, bloating, and nausea. It's also a mild pain reliever. A lot of people use it for headaches, and it's stimulating, right? It's energizing. Chamomile is a nervine sedative, but it's a gentle one, and you can use it for any age of person, including infants. It is a carminative, so babies with colic can benefit from a chamomile tea. It's also anti-inflammatory, and so it's going to help relieve inflammation either internally, if you take it internally, or if you put it in an oil and apply it topically, it can help with topical inflammation. Elder is a bush, so when you grow it, you need to give it space to bush out. But both the berry, the flower, and the bark and leaves are medicinal, but for different purposes. So the berry is commonly known. A lot of people make elderberry syrup, but you can also cook with it, make jam, pie, all kinds of things. It's an immune stimulant. It helps accelerate your cytokine response, but it also is an antiviral. And the flower is a little more gentle for folks that need it. And it is what we call a diaphoretic. It helps relieve fever. Um, and it's also really great for the lungs. We only use the bark and the leaves topically, so you can infuse them in oil or make a compress because they're full of phytochemicals that might be tough on your liver. So we only use those topically. Sage, the culinary herb sage, is really fantastic as an astringent. So if you've got edema, for example, it helps to shrink edema, which I know can be a common side effect for some of the cancer treatments. It's also antimicrobial, but you need to be careful because if you have an estrogen, um, triggered cancer, you don't want to use it or consume it at this time because it is estrogenic. Rosemary, another culinary herb that is medicinal. A lot of these became culinary herbs, and we acquired flavor tastes for them because of their medicinal properties. Um, it helps with memory. So if you've got brain fog, rosemary and mint are a really lovely combination to infuse in your drinking water, and just drink that all day really helps. Antioxidant, and of course, it helps enhance circulation. So if you are on a medication or a supplement that you want to make sure gets around, taking it with rosemary is super helpful because it gets it around the body so that it can be of benefit wherever you need it. Lavender is not just lovely smelling and attracting pollinators, but it also reduces anxiety. It calms, it's sedating, and it's vulnerary, which means it helps heal wounds. So, depending on what kind of wound, you might use it topically or internally. And finally, our final page, I know this is a lot to take. Again, you'll get the deck. Echinacea, an Ohio native wildflower, is well known for helping the immune system, but it's a modulator. So if you are on immune suppressing herbs, it's okay to take echinacea, but it's not okay to take elderberry, right? Because elderberry is an immune stimulant, whereas echinacea is an immune modulator, helping your immune system make good choices. It also helps promote saliva. So if you're on one of those medications that gives you chronic dry mouth, echinacea tea is something you might want to drink regularly. And very importantly, it is a lymphatic cleanser, which means if you take it on the regular, it will help stimulate your lymph to release stagnation. And if you've got lymph swelling from chemo or radiation, it really does help. I encourage people to try lymphatic cleansing after after your full run of chemo and radiation. Don't do it before, because we want those drugs in our system for as long as they need to be there, that our doctors deem them necessary, because we don't want to purge them out of our system prematurely. So, it's a hard treatment to go through. So let's make it count, right? Let's do what our doctors say, and then afterwards, when it's time to get it out of our system, we can use herbs like echinacea and cleavers, which I don't have on this list because it's mostly a wild growing plant, to help cleanse our lymph. Calendula is a really lovely marigold, very sunny and beautiful. And it is fantastic for skin issues. It helps heal wounds, it helps inflammation of the skin. A lot of times I will use calendula in a radiation salve that I make for cancer patients. Very gentle salve that helps reduce the inflammation, heal the burns, et cetera, et cetera. Borage is not only a medicinal plant, but you can also pick off the flowers and put them in your salad. They taste kind of like cucumbers. But it is an adrenal tonic. So, being sick and going through a grueling treatment can often spike your cortisol again and again and again, and it leads to burnout. It leads to adrenal fatigue. Borage is a fantastic adrenal tonic. So I highly encourage folks to think about that in what they're growing this year. Catnip is not just for kitties. It's a sedative in humans, but if you've ever given it to your cat, usually it makes them a little manic, just showing you how biochemistry can be different in different mammals. But it is sedating to us. It's also helping with digestion. There's a lot of digestives, carminatives in this list, because I know that often one of the side effects of cancer treatment is nausea and lack of appetite. All of these carminatives can help you with that. Oregano, another culinary herb that is medicinal, antimicrobial, very strong. So, along with thyme, it's my favorite to infuse into vinegar for cleaning. But also just regularly eating these yummy herbs in our food can help us stay well. Unlike antibiotics, right, which kill the beneficial bacteria in our gut and possibly on our skin, oregano and thyme won't do that. And so you're killing pathogens, but you're not killing the bacteria that is beneficial to us. And okay, I lied. This is the last slide on herbs. Sorry about that. So half of our session here is on the herbs themselves, and then half of it will be on gardening them. So valerian, many people have heard of valerian. It helps people get to sleep. Many people also don't know that it is a muscle relaxer. If you get those leg cramps in the middle of the night, or you have an injury that has muscle tissue damage, valerian is fantastic for this. And it is a hypnotic and a sedative, meaning it's going to help relax the body to help you get to sleep, but also relax the brain, right? If you've got that brain chatter that keeps you awake at night, valerian is a friend. Feverfew is fantastic for headaches, very particularly migraine headaches, although it's good on all headaches. But, migraines are the bane of many people's existence. And feverfew is actually recommended by Germany, Commission E, which is the equivalent of their FDA, over any pharmaceutical, feverfew for migraines. It works on inflammation around the trigeminal nerve here, which is the most common cause of migraines. Um, and it's fantastic, right? I love it. I make a headache tea and it has feverfew in it, as well as several other herbs. And I also make a migraine tincture where feverfew is the main ingredient, and there are other herbs in there as well. Marshmallow. Many people don't realize that there is a plant called marshmallow, and it's how we used to make the candy marshmallow. There's no marshmallow in marshmallows anymore. It's just gelatin and sugar and whatnot. But marshmallow makes this substance we call mucilage when it's extracted in a cold process, and that's what they used to use to make marshmallows. But it is really helpful if you've got an ulcer or diverticulitis or anything like in the gut that is inflamed and needs soothing. Mucilage is a really great component, you know, uh, phytochemical to soothe those things. It's also very moisturizing. It's an emollient. I use it in hair products for dry, frizzy hair. So it is a really lovely thing to do. And I also use it in my sore throat drops because it is soothing. It's a demulcent. It moistens and soothes inflamed dry tissues. So it's really great for all that morning post-nasal drip that people get from their allergies. This time of year, our sinuses start making more mucus and it drains all night long. So we wake up with a sore throat, even though we're not sick. Marshmallow is great for that. Holy basil, also known as tulsi, is the only adaptogen on this list, and an adaptogen helps you cope with stress and change. It is appropriate for all people. This particular adaptogen grows really well here in Ohio. You use the leaves and the stems, and it makes a delicious tea. My very favorite tea in the whole world is tulsi and rose petals. They taste delicious together, and it just feels like I'm getting a hug from the inside when I drink it. Very restorative and calming. It also helps to balance blood sugar, Tulsi does. So if you've got someone in your life that is pre-diabetic or diabetic, drinking Tulsi tea on the regular definitely helps, maybe with a little bit of cinnamon, because that also helps. Anise hyssop is also a lovely tea. It not only is a carminative, helping us with our digestion, but it's also an expectorant. So if your mucus issues in the spring go even into the lungs, it's going to help you expel all of that excessive mucus. Very helpful for people with asthma. And finally, motherwort. Motherwort is one of those artemisias, and it is a nervine. It helps to, stop a racing heart. So I often use it in my panic attack formulas to kind of lower the physiological response of panic attacks to make people calm down a little easier. It's also fantastic for high blood pressure and the heart and vessels. It's supreme in the cardiovascular support. So When you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. We will get to Q&A at the end if you have a question about any of these plants. Also, we'll get to a point where we're talking about like what medicinally you might want, and you don't know what herb is good for that. We'll get to that as well. So you can put those questions in like, oh, I have a family with asthma, or oh, we have this condition, and so I'm looking for a plant to grow. Go ahead and get those questions into the chat as I talk. But the USDA zone, if you're not an experienced gardener, you may not know about this, so we'll go over this very quickly. If you look at Ohio, we're mostly green. There's a tiny blob of blue there in the Hocking Hills area, but we are zone 6. I always get it mixed up, 6A or 6B. I think we're 6B mostly, and then 6A is the blue. But either way, we're in zone 6. And so what the USDA zone does is it shows when is the last frost, which is around Mother's Day in this part of the world, and then when is the first frost, which is usually in early to mid-November in this part of the world. And that defines your growing season, right? How long you can grow most things, annuals in particular. Um, and if you are interested, there's a link to a book here called the Sunset National Garden Book. Sunset Magazine is a West Coast magazine and on gardening and food and lovely things like that. But they make an entire directory of national resources, and pretty much every plant you could ever think to plant is in the Sunset Garden Book, telling you exactly what that plant needs in terms of sun and moisture and soil. It is just a fantastic resource. It's out of print, but you can get used copies really easily, and there is a link there to get one. All right, so why would we want to grow medicine? Number one, healthcare is becoming really hard to obtain these days. A lot of people are uninsured, many are underinsured with extreme copayments or deductibles. And even if you have insurance, sometimes it's really hard to get an appointment, right? It takes forever. And so one of the ways that we can help ourselves is by growing medicine for common maladies that we know to expect, and also growing herbs to help us stay well and stay out of the doctor's office. It's far more affordable to do this than it is to buy pharmaceuticals. For a perennial, a plant that comes back year after year, you plant it once and you have years and years of medicine. For annuals, you spend, $5 to $7 either on a packet of seeds or a seedling, and it gives you an entire year's worth of medicine because you harvest throughout the season, you preserve it, and you should have it year round. And that is way cheaper than most prescriptions. And it's unlike pharmaceuticals, it is sustainable. It does not pollute as an industry. If you produce more than you actually need, people love getting gifts. You can also feed it to livestock if you have livestock, or you can just compost it, right? And many of these herbs actually benefit the soil, not just through, composting, but let's say red clover, which is a medicinal, you can plant it and it fixes nitrogen in your soil. So a lot of times soil is depleted of nitrogen. So it is just a more sustainable way to go about helping you stay well and treating common maladies. So let's talk about our medicinal needs. Hopefully you can see the whole screen. Yeah, okay, so it ends with reproductive there. So I would be interested in hearing from you. Think about what kinds of issues are for you and your family and your friends so that I can help you find herbs that work well for what you're trying to do. And I've given some examples of some pretty common ones, but this isn't everything. Give you a second to go ahead and type in the chat any kind of issue that you or your family are experiencing, and then I can address those issues in the Q&A section because I definitely want to get to your Q&A. So take a look, write out some things in the chat. Would love to see that. And we're going to move forward. Oh, and by the way, these herbs that are on the left here, the top one is lemon balm, one of my favorites, and the bottom one is cleavers, also called lady's bedstraw. And it was one of those lymphatic cleansers that I mentioned. Growing that, it'll come back year after year, is fantastic for lymphatic cleansing. All right, let's see here. Let's get into some gardening techniques, starting with companion planting. So, what you see on the right here is a very traditional indigenous North American system of companion planting called the Three Sisters. So, they plant beans, corn, and squash all in the same area. The corn acts as a trellis for the beans that vine upward, right? So, it creates structural support for the beans. And the squash, are low ground dwelling plants, and they sort of stomp out any other competition for resources that would take away from the squash, beans, and corn. They grow really well together in the same area and don't take away resources, and provide beneficial insects for one another. This is a piece of wisdom that if you are planning on growing any kind of corn, any kind of beans, any kind of squash, is a really fantastic method to save space, to repel pests, to attract beneficial insects, and to minimize the space that these things take up. So yeah, Three Sisters is a example of companion planting. And like I said, I'm going to be giving you a chart that you can look like. I know I'm planting cabbage. What goes well with cabbage, right? What repels cabbage moths? What, enhances their flavor? What grows well and plays nice with its neighbor. And so you'll be getting a chart like that to really help you enhance your companion planting strategy. Most people in the United States, when they garden, they're gardening in a very colonial, historical, European model where we plant rows of things, and what is in a row next to it isn't necessarily intended to benefit its neighbor. It's just where we planted it. But we can be more strategic and get better results because we're, not losing as many things to pests. We are enhancing flavor. Yarrow, for example, one of the medicinal herbs that I mentioned, really enhances the flavors of annual vegetables when it's planted next to tomatoes, cucumbers, or peppers. So, like, yarrow would be great as a neighbor to any of those crops. But expanding on companion planting, you want to grow plants together that prefer similar conditions, but also do not have similar diseases. You want to plant those apart, right? You want to think about planting fast growing stuff next to slow growing stuff because then you're maximizing your space, particularly if you only have so much space, right? You just have a couple raised beds. Really strategically thinking about what you plant next to each other is going to benefit you because you're going to be able to grow more. You can also grow taller plants next to smaller plants. So if you've got a really tall, like vining cucumber, for example, you grow a row and it has a trellis and it's creating shade for the rest of the bed. Grow lettuces in the rest of that bed. They like shade, right? So thinking about how you are going to plot your beds, whether they're raised beds directly in the ground, containers, is really going to help you maximize your space. And you can also think about doing succession planting, which means, you've got an early harvest of a certain kind of plant, and then once you harvest all of that, you rip that row out, you succession plant something else that would do well during that time through the end of the year. A lot of times people do that with their brassicas, their broccolis, their kale, things like that. But you can also plant to improve the soil. If you can't compost where you are or get compost very easily, you could plant herbs that you're going to plow under and have that benefit the soil. Comfrey is a really easy to grow herb that benefits the soil. A lot of people harvest the leaves throughout the season and make compost tea It's stinky, but oh my gosh, it will make your plants grow like crazy. Like I said, red clover can also fix the nitrogen in your soil if it's nitrogen depleted. So thinking about those kinds of ideas. And then thinking about what grows on your plot. When you get the worksheet with the grid, it's going to talk about, all right, so you've plotted it where you're growing things on your particular piece of land, yard, patio, whatever it is. Now you need to think about the sun and the shade over the course of the day. So when you see a seed packet that says full sun, that means it gets at least 6 hours of direct sunlight. Partial sun is less than that, right? It's probably about 4 hours. So you need to think about, all right, I'm planting things in a way that each of these plants is going to do well because it gets the amount of sun that it needs. You also need to think about the types of trees on your property if you are planting directly into the ground. Now, when we plant in the ground, trees are the boss. They decide what does well because of their roots that permeate just as wide a circumference as their tops, right? So you need to think about, okay, this whole area contains tree roots, and it's going to decide if anything I plant in the ground is going to do well. And I'll give you some tips on that. And then thinking about moisture. We don't need to think about moisture here in Ohio as much as someone in a drought-stricken area does, but you also need to think about, all right, I'm planning this plot, and if it does not get enough rain this season, I'm going to install, soaker hoses or whatever, and kind of setting up your infrastructure to make it easy for you to garden, and not have to constantly schlep water out really far out to get to, your plants. And then again, of course, USDA zone, first and last frosts. You don't want to plant things that only do well in a warmer climate. Here, it's not going to get hot enough, but also we're going to have too many frosts bookending our season, and it's not going to do as well. Now, that said, when I showed you the USDA zones, that was the USDA zones defined many years ago. They are changing. Climate change is making all kinds of disruptions, and we're not sure where the chips are going to fall exactly, but it's a good general statement to say that things are getting warmer, and we may be in a zone a couple years from now where we can grow peaches and pecans a little easier than we were able to before. Um, and then you want to think about what you're already growing. Like I talked about interplanting, right? Thinking about what goes well, what repels insects that you've been plagued with before, tomato hornworm, cabbage moths, whatever it is. And then, planting something next to it that repels those. Like I mentioned, trees are the landscape boss. So here's a book, and it's linked in the deck. You will get a copy of it. Restoration Agriculture by Mark Shepard, who is sort of the American leader, thought leader in permaculture. He has a whole chapter on trees and how to create a landscape that works for you based on the trees that are on your property. Many Ohioans know that black walnut doesn't play nice with many types of plants, but there are plants that do well with black walnut. Black walnut also has friends. So I highly recommend this book if you're going to be planting directly into the ground and you have trees that may or may not conflict with what you want to plant. Here's an example of a chart, a companion planting chart, with some common things that a lot of people like to grow, tomatoes and peppers and whatnot, and a compatible plant that grows with it, and why. Why, you would want to think about planting it this way. But like I said, the chart is way more comprehensive than this. This is just an example, but it's kind of what you will look for when you get it. Now, the number one question that I get is, I have so much shade on my property. What can I grow? Here are some examples of plants that do well in shady places. And I said five, but then I went crazy and gave you way more than five. But more than five is always better. And I put medicinal mushrooms here. Now, this is an herbalism, uh, you know, I have a background in herbalism, but that doesn't mean that I don't use fungus in my practice for both clients and for Haven Herbs when I make medicines. Medicinal mushrooms are fantastic, particularly for folks that are in cancer treatment. Many medicinal mushrooms are recommended for folks in cancer treatment. Reishi, turkey tail, shiitake, all of them have anti-tumor, anti-cancer effects. I highly recommend watching a TED Talk. If you go to YouTube and Google Ted Stamets breast cancer, Ted Stamets is the world's foremost mycologist. People come to him for information and samples for their, laboratory tests of medicinal mushrooms. And he has this TED Talk where he talks about his mom. And she called him one day and told him she had stage 4 breast cancer. And he's like, why did you wait until stage 4? Because she totally hid it from everybody in the family. And so he immediately put her on a protocol in conjunction with her oncologists of turkey tail, and it's amazing. Like you really need to hear the story. And so she gets on stage with him afterwards. It was really lovely. But yes, YouTube, Paul Stamets, not Ted Stamets, sorry, Paul Stamets. It's a TED Talk. Right? TED Talk, Paul Stamets, breast cancer, because it is a really inspirational video and it can show you the power of medicinal mushrooms. And most of the time, when you're growing them in shady places outdoors, you are going to get a log and inoculate it. And it takes about 2 years to get fruit, which is what we think of as the mushroom, because the first year it's the mycelium, which is the most of the mushroom, is taking over the log inside. And then in the second year, it's going to start pushing up fruit through the log that is visible that you can harvest. So, there are several places to get medicinal seeds and seedlings. If you're looking for seeds and sprouting them yourself, honestly, Haven Herbs has a huge comprehensive collection. And you can get 10% off by using the code here, Lifelong Learning. We don't just carry medicine, we also carry food and culinary and tea herbs, house plants, stuff for landscaping, like all kinds of hostas. We have blue hostas. I thought those were really cool. And a lot more. And we also have non-plastic gardening tools. If you're looking to eliminate plastic from your life, we've got a lot of plastic alternatives. Here in Ohio, we are blessed to have one of two medicinal plant nurseries in the country, Ohio and Oregon. That's where they are. And in Ohio, it's in Athens. It's called Companion Plants. And they sell medicinal seedlings. So if you don't have the time or space or inclination to sprout your own seeds, you can get starts, which is slightly more expensive. But, I think the most expensive really exotic start he has is $12, but they're usually hovering around $5, $6, depending on what you get. So Peter over at Companion Plants can help you. I often take my herb students there every year to tour the nursery and get really excited about gardening. But there is the place for seedlings, and if you're looking for seeds, you can just go to Haven Herbs. Um, and I mentioned several books in this talk, Restoration Agriculture by Mark Shepard, the Sunset National Garden book, and one that I didn't mention was The Organic Medicinal Herb Farmer. Now, this is mainly for people that want to grow herbs in quantity to sell them to the herbalism market, but there are great tips for home growers as well, things that you may not have thought of when you have only been growing annual edible plants. So that is super helpful as well. So yeah. So my name is Lily. I am from Haven Herbs, and I am open to your questions. Do, 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 do. Oh my, there's lots of things in the chat. Let me open it up for uh all right. Is silicone okay, wait. Let me go all the way back up. All right. So what part of elder not to consume, only for topical use? So you can consume the flowers and the berries internally, but when you want to use the leaves and the bark, it's only good for topical use. I either recommend it as a compress or steeping it in oil to make a salve. It is a very common European green salve, meaning for like wound healing and stuff, and it's elder bark is and leaves are used for that. What would be good for breast cancer, osteoporosis, lipedema? Oh my goodness. Okay, quite a list. Um, so I mentioned several mushrooms that would be of benefit for breast cancer, particularly turkey tail for breast cancer. Um, and when I say good for, I just want to make it very clear that when herbalists recommend things, we usually recommend things to individuals, not as a blanket statement, because um, holistic medicine is a medicine that looks at the person and their constitution and their symptom manifestation and their condition. And we look at plants and what actions they have in the body, like anti-inflammatory, anti-tumor, but also its energetics, because the energetics are what make a good combination for a particular individual, right? I'll give you an example. So when I've had people come to me with problems with eczema, right? Eczema is sort of this blanket diagnosis. I don't know if people understand that, but like it's a rash where the cause is any number of things. But doctors will give you a diagnosis which could unlock particular pharmaceuticals. That is how modern biochemical medicine works, right? You get a diagnosis and then you get a prescribed treatment that insurance may or may not cover, right? And so with eczema, I've seen people that have been given a diagnosis of eczema with very different symptom manifestation, right? So one person has a dry, scaly rash that itches and it bleeds when they scratch it. One person has a damp, weeping rash that doesn't itch, but it sticks to things. It's gross. So sorry, no judgment there, but yuck. So these are very different rashes and would require very different plants, right? Because when we matchmake as herbalists, we are trying to balance a homeostasis. So the person with dry, scaly bleeding would get something that is moistening, something that is soothing, and also stops itch. The person with the wet weepy would get something that is drying, something that is wound healing. Like they're very different. So when I say, oh, it's good for breast cancer, I want you to understand that there are different types of breast cancer, number one. And then there are also different ways that it manifests in different bodies. And so I can throw out recommendations, which I will. But I also want you to know that it's always, always, always preferable to see a holistic practitioner, fill out an intake, do an interview, and get custom recommendations. Because we want the remedy or the tonic to work for you as opposed to for cancer, right? Like that's the difference between modern medicine, which has, one size fits all prescriptions, and then they cycle through them to figure out which one works for you, and holistic practitioners, which include Western herbalists like me, but also Ayurvedic and Chinese practitioners. Um, and they look at the person first and make a custom recommendation so that it's much more likely to work for you from the jump. So osteoporosis. So osteoporosis is a condition where your bone cells are not reproducing faster than they are decaying, and it causes bone loss. And so you want bone building, herbs that stimulate the osteoblasts, sorry, to make more bone tissue. Um, and so I would have to ask a specific number of questions about your osteoporosis, but just off the top of my head, in addition to bone building foods, because food is medicine, I would also look at maybe ironweed. I would look at let's see, dark leafy greens, stinging nettle in particular would be super helpful to you. Lipedema. So, I would have to ask questions about it, but where is it manifesting, for example, and are you looking for topicals or internals? But I am open to working with anyone. I do have a link on my website, which I will provide to folks if you want to set up a consultation. And high cholesterol. High cholesterol is easy. There are a ton of foods that you should be eating a lot of, like garlic, to get rid of bad cholesterol and sort of balance it out between the good cholesterol. And garlic is a medicine. It's also antimicrobial, which is really nice, so that you're less prone to getting infections. Let's see. Mouth sores due to chemo. What herb might help? Yes. So first, there are plenty of herbs that could definitely help heal lesions in the mouth. I would say myrrh and propolis would be very helpful, and they also help keep things from getting infected because you're getting stuff in your mouth all the time for when you eat. So having those particular resins that have been tinctured would be helpful. The other thing that I would recommend is checking your toothpaste and making sure that you don't have sodium lauryl sulfate in your toothpaste, which most of them do. If it kind of foams up a little when you're brushing, chances are it has SLS. Those actually create canker sores and lesions in the mouth of people. And so I would switch to like a tooth powder or a tooth tablet to help um, make it easier for those lesions to heal and not create any new ones. Immune boosting and pain and inflammation. So, stinging nettle is really fantastic for pain and inflammation. One of the things that people used to do in old times is they would take a whole batch of stinging nettle, and if they had rheumatoid arthritis or gout or any kind of swelling in the joints, they would whip themselves with the stinging nettle. And yes, it stings, and yes, it creates a rash, but it's so effective at reducing that inflammation that the rash was worth it. So stinging nettle, you don't have to whip yourself. You can take it internally. You can make a tea. You could take a tincture. That's really great. And also, one of the things that I use for pain and inflammation on the regular is turmeric. So I make a product called turmeric tea paste. It's turmeric, ginger, and black pepper that have been suspended in raw local honey. And then I use it to make a golden milk. You can use any kind of milk. It doesn't have to be dairy milk. You just use an immersion blender and it turns this amazing gold color. And then you can drink that. You can put it in a smoothie. You can use it as creamer in your coffee. I do that because I know I'm going to drink my coffee every morning. It's here in my mug right now. Mm. When I don't take it, my knees get creaky and I have problems on the stairs and my fingers get stiff. And then I can't do a lot of my handicrafts that I like to do. So I put turmeric tea paste or golden milk in my coffee every day and it definitely helps. So I'm a big fan of that. So turmeric and stinging nettle are things to get you started. The other thing that you might want to try is meadowsweet. You can grow meadowsweet here in Ohio. It is where we used to get salicylic acid from for aspirin. So it is very high in pain relievers. So meadowsweet is another herb that you might want to try growing. Lymphedema, yes. So if you are done with your treatments, then we can start to treat the lymphedema. And I make a lymphatic massage oil that you can take to an oncology massage person to help facilitate lymphatic drainage. I also recommend dry brushing, and there are YouTube videos that you can follow along once you achieve a dry brush. Um, to help you with wherever your lymphedema is. And then tinctures of cleavers, in particular, I would recommend. I know when I felt some lymphatic stagnation and like an enlarged lymph node here, under the armpit near the breast, I panicked. And so I used Cleaver's tincture and I just applied it topically to the area and I also took it internally and it went away. So it's early detection is great for lymph stagnation. Often we will feel in here to see if we're sick, but everywhere we have lymph nodes throughout the entire body. Um, and if you've got an issue with them, then I highly recommend a protocol of lymphatic drainage, both manually and chemically, with herbs. Are there any herbs that will not grow in a container? No. Most herbs will grow in a container. You'll just need to see how big the herb is going to get at the end result. So if you're growing something like echinacea that's not a dwarf variety, but is a regular variety, it gets really tall. You don't want it to be blown over. So you want a heavy container and you want a big container because it will spread. Um, so, just think about the size of your container. But yes, you absolutely can grow most herbs in containers. You may need to, after the first year, actually thin out things, and then you can give gifts of echinacea and mint to your neighbors because they are successful. They want to spread. That is their life's mission, in addition to helping us. So, yes, you will need to use containers. That is not a problem. Just think in advance. Once you get your seeds, look at them, see how tall they get, see how big they get, read up on them, see how successful they are at spreading and if they're a perennial, that is. If they're an annual, don't worry about it because it's just the 1 year. But yeah, think about it in advance after you get your seed packets. Can grow indoors, especially during the winter. All of the herbs that I mentioned can be moved indoors as long as you're providing adequate lighting, um, and moisture. And you actually have to water a lot more than you think in the winter because your heat is on and it's very drying. I water my plants indoors more in the winter than I do in the summer. They actually stay moist with the humidity a lot more in the summer. So, as long as you've got the space and you set up good lighting for them. So you're going to need to get some full spectrum lighting. I have full spectrum lighting so much over my house. Like there are some good resources. One of the companies that I really love, and these are investments, right? They will last you years and years and years. Soltech, Soltech. I don't get any kickback from them, but I think they have lots of different kinds of grow lights, ones that you can mount to the wall, ones that are freestanding, either tall or tabletop, like lots of different varieties. And one lamp can actually benefit multiple plants. So I would recommend that. And then yeah, you can pull in pretty much anything. And one of the things that I always pull in is I always pull in sage and thyme for antimicrobial stuff. I also pull in my root crops. So roots and rhizomes, most of those crops that are medicinal don't natively grow here, so they don't do well with how cold it gets in Ohio. So I pull those inside and I just let them die back and I just keep them inside so that the soil doesn't get too cold. So, but they naturally die back and then resurrect themselves. And once it gets past Mother's Day, then I put them back outside. Um, Paul Stamets. There we go. Darlene spelled it for you there. Yes, so Stamets. Oh, and you found it. Yay. Darlene linked to the video that I talked about, the TED Talk. It makes me cry every time. It's awesome. I love that video. And silicone is not considered a plastic. Depending on how it's manufactured, if it's a food grade, um, you should be fine. I have some silicone things that I have in my house. Um, and it is a good alternative to plastics for sure. Um, Turmeric and lavender are not safe with breast cancer. Is that true? Depends on the type of breast cancer you have. If you want to email me directly with your actual diagnosis, that would be helpful. But if your doctor told you to avoid those, you should avoid those. Um, it could be that the drugs that you're on interfere with those particular herbs. And one of the things that I do when I'm meeting with folks is I get a list of everything they're on and I look up all of them before I create any kind of formula. And that is what a practitioner will do for you, rather than trying to just take things off the shelf. Um, Safe to use fertilizer. I wouldn't use a chemical fertilizer. I would use a natural fertilizer. One of the things I like to do is my friend has a fish tank, and every time she cleans the water, I get that fish poopy water and I water my plants with it. It is like liquid gold. You can also get some organic fertilizers that are, poop sourced or plant sourced, like composted plants. I would recommend that over something like Miracle Grow. Dry brushing, the same as brushing with massage. No. So dry brushing literally is a brush that you scrape the body with, and it's like a mild exfoliant as well as stimulating the lymph. And I can link to a dry brush when I send Darlene the stuff, and then you can find one. But I think that's all the questions. And oh my gosh, it's 10 o'clock. I can't believe I went all the way to the end and I talked really fast. Are there any last minute questions before we part ways?
Well, Lily, thank you so very much for spending your time and your expertise with us. Please plan to join us in April on the 28th, and Lily's going to be talking about staying well in the new age of plagues.
Oh
So
boy, there's a lot of them.
that's a new one, and it sounds very interesting. So I will be getting the handouts from Lily, and then I'm going to load the video up to Zoom, to YouTube. If you go to YouTube, you have to do our entire title, Cancer Support Community Central Ohio. If you do just Cancer Support Community, you get our headquarters videos, which are wonderful. You just won't find Lily on there. So type our whole name in. You can go back and review this. You'll get the handouts. And thank you so much again, Lily. We greatly appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thank you so much. I'll see you next month.